Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today, we're going to be talking about NFTs. We're pretty excited. Elizabeth Stricker will be here to answer your questions. She is an expert in talking about this. And so she is the Director of Media, Entrepreneurship, and Innovation at Georgia State University. And so she is going to be discussing NFTs and answering your questions. So we'll finally find out what an NFT is and whether we should be paying attention to it, hopefully. So pretty exciting. Now I'm going to hand it off to Liberty White, our host for today.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are in the world. And for those of you who are new, we answer your questions all on media, tech, live streaming. So you run this show. So go ahead and put your questions in so that our panel can answer them. And let's take it away, Bill.
Absolutely. Thank you. Our first one comes this morning from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He says, I've been using OBS to spruce up my Zoom meeting presence with overlays, window captures, and so forth. There have been plenty of reliability issues with lagging and so on. Is Vmix less resource intensive and more reliable?
Chris.
Here's what I'll tell you, and it's in terms of any software switcher, Tobias, it's the problem is that the software doesn't run out of buttons usually. So I can just keep creating new scenes and what do they call them? Sources. I can add sources and I can scale them and push them around. And the computer doesn't have I mean, there are kind of ways, but at the way I deal with computers, my computer can't say, hey, that's hard, leave me alone, right? Like, and whereas if I'm switching something on a piece of physical hardware, and this is a comment about OBS and Vmix, when I'm switching something on a physical piece of hardware, I know, oh, I don't have any more inputs. And so the software can grow beyond the capabilities of the computer that you're actually switching it on. I think a lot of people prefer Vmix, and I'm not certain, Tobias, are you on Windows or Macintosh?
Windows.
Yeah. That's all I have to say. Either one of them. You just have to be very careful. And so it might be that you're just asking OBS to do too many things for your piece of hardware.
Guy?
Yeah, with the large user base that Vmix has, I mean, they've been able to throw a lot of time and energy and resources into making it solid. It's been a great app to learn. I've just been using it myself every day for a couple of years now, and I'm super impressed. If you're finding that OBS isn't doing what you need it to do, or it's crashing, like some of the things that Vmix does, it relies on a GPU. So if you get a good graphics card, you can go into your task manager and look at your performance monitor, and you can see what's going on. And so like with Vmix, I'm using an NVIDIA, which is what it prefers for a GPU. And I mean, I could throw 20 sources in here and it'll handle it. So I mean, it's a solid app, and at $60, you could download a free trial, and then it's $60 for the basic version. So it's not a whole lot of money, and it blows away OBS with the things that you could do.
John.
I use OBS every day for office hours. This whole thing is created in OBS. It's pretty stable. What's interesting is it runs better on PC than it does on Mac. But you got to watch the plugins. They will make it crash. So I'm not sure what's happening on your specific machine. That's interesting.
Alex.
Yeah, I've experimented a lot with software switchers and so on and so forth, and used a lot of them for a variety of different things. And I will always lean towards an ATEM Mini or some kind of piece of hardware for my basic. I want to have a couple different sources, and I want to be able to jump to them. I do think that there's a place for Vmix and OBS, especially on the PC, to add more pizzazz to it. But as everybody has said, the real issue you get into is you can ask your PC to do more than it's capable of. What I would definitely do is be opening up your task managers and seeing like what your CPU usage is, so that you know, like, am I hitting it? What you should be aiming for is 40 to 60% utilization. 40% is okay. It should never go over 60. If you're working on a computer and you ever see your computer go over 60, I used to use Wirecast all the time. Like literally, I built my company on it. So if you ever if you ever see it go over 60, you're doing too much, or you don't, or your computer's too small.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I totally agree. You got to think about OBS as they built a house, they built a frame, and then everybody decided to bring in their own walls, they bring in their own ceiling and things like that. Since it's community built as opposed to a company built, where they can put all the code together. So you start putting plugins in, their third-party plugins that aren't supported, and so they can run into a whole bunch of problems with that. On the same aspect that Alex is talking about, modularizing your setup is very important. So your computer is not doing everything all at once. I never, if I use this computer to switch between cameras, which is what I do, I use another computer that's going to stream it out. I use another computer that's going to record the video, and then of course my audio is coming in before that, before the computer, so that gets touched in a different realm there. So it's very important to kind of look to see what you're doing with your system, and be able to match that and get under that 60% process that Alex was talking about.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. He says, do you aim for a certain profit margin? If so, what percentage do you typically aim for?
Chris?
I don't think of the profit margin per se. I just think about the profit mainly. And this all comes down, and we really need to do like a whole day, not even a second hour, but a whole day on billing and charging and stuff. But my formula is to, as a freelancer or a in small LLC, you look at your expenses. What are your expenses, Noah? What does it cost to be you? And just know that every hour of every day, the people that you're working for have to pay for that. And that includes everything. And it's difficult to sit down there and kind of workshop all of the expenses that your business has, all of the overhead that you have. And it's especially difficult in a small business where you in your spare time will say, well, I'll just go load the truck for the job tomorrow. But you need to charge and get paid for that, because there will be a day when you're too busy to do it and you're going to have to pay someone else to do it. And so now all of a sudden, what you were doing in your spare time becomes something that sucks at your profit.
Alex? Oh, sorry, Chris.
Yeah, Chris made a great point there. I mean, I think that when I was when I worked at ILM, I was, you have to join a union, and the union got very upset with me because I was constantly putting in extra hours, just because I wanted my shot to look better, than it did. And I didn't have enough, I was a compressed amount of time, and they talked about managing expectations, and I always thought of it as like, oh, well, that's their problem, not my problem. So I'm still going to make my shot look the way I want it to look. The problem really with that was that you create expectations among the producers of what is possible in a certain amount of time. I was also had a reputation for, in Lucasfilm for doing things really fast, but it was because I was putting in 100 hours a week and making it look like 40. And so, so it got me ahead, but it also made it very hard, to maintain. So this is all a marathon. And one of the things to look at is, again, all the things Chris talked about, all the costs, the salary you want to take home, your insurance, your rent, your gas, everything it takes. You have to know that number, or you don't know how much you should charge. Like literally, because that hourly has to cover it, and it doesn't cover it at 40 hours a week because that's not what you're working. Maybe you are. Good, congratulations if you are. But if you are a freelancer, a lot of times, or if you're a company, you have downtime and uptime, and so you have to think about that average as well. Of that, it has to make sense as a business for it to run when you're not working every single day. And so those are the things. I know that in some part, like when you think about hard numbers, not in our business, but in other businesses, one number is 2.6. So they take the salary of every employee and they multiply it by 2.6. That's the hourly that they charge for what they do. That's probably more than we charge for what we do. But there are those kind of hard and fast numbers. But the reality is, it also depends on the size of the job. When I work on a small job, I usually am actually looking for more margin, because it's more irregular. But if I get a huge job, my clients are going to expect to pay less margin. So because they're guaranteeing something over a very long period of time. So so we figure out how to adjust those. And then the other thing to look for is where things can be magically margin, which is what I tend to call it, which is rental. So owning your own equipment if you're not busy enough, owning your own equipment is a liability because you have to store it and keep it up and everything else. If you're busy, owning your own equipment can be a thing that clients will understand, but after you paid it off, you're now generating revenue from it. And oftentimes we were generating 30-40% of the job was renting equipment, and so it is that can be a real value, add to what you're doing.
Sky?
And one of the challenges as an artist, how do you also be a business? And what is it that you're doing? Are you providing a service or a product? And so I love the answers that Chris and Alex are bringing. And yes, I also agree. I want to do a 2-day workshop on this question too, because I find the fair market value of myself is different in Los Angeles than it is in Seattle, than it is in Chicago, than it is in Detroit. So the consequence of what is my profit margin is often dependent upon what is it that the client values me for. So this is a longer, deeper question, but I'm so glad you asked it. But I also, what are the lost lead? Alex talks about not giving, well, he does, giving things away. And that's often referred to as the lost leader, because you're trying to grow a relationship for that future business. And then oftentimes there's windfalls. So I love all these conversations that I'd love to have a lot more of.
Guy?
Yeah, we took a course at our local community college called the Small Business Accelerator. And one of the things that I noted that all the other people of varying businesses, from cabinet makers to restaurant owners, there was a report that you can get from your local library. If you were to buy it yourself, it would cost over $1,000, but typically you can get this report at your local library. And in this report, you can type in your NAICS code, which every industry has a NAICS code, and you can see balance sheets of different corporations that have submitted to Dun & Bradstreet. So you can go and look at like under $1 million to 5 million to 10 million, and then you can actually see what net profit numbers are normal for that industry at that revenue number. So then you'll know if you're in the ballpark. And when you're starting out, I mean, it's good to know, like, so in retail, we're shooting for 32% top line profit, but net winds up being like 2 to 3 to 4% in e-commerce, because that's where I'm in. And it's slim margins. I mean, it's make or break. A lot of it comes down to customer acquisition costs. So know that number as well if you can. Like, a lot of people spend a lot of money on trade shows and things like that to get a customer. And if you can have that repeat customer come again and have them tell their friends, I mean, that just makes those marketing numbers go down. And so over time, those numbers start to look better and better. So give it time, and then keep an eye on cash flow, and watch those numbers like a hawk.
Take your time to do the homework is basically what you're saying, Guy. Chris?
Yeah, and really quickly, Noah, I wanted to add one thing. There's a reason why a lot of people don't actually do a very hard accounting of the time they spend and the money they get paid, and actually cipher that out. And the reason is we would be depressed at what we're taking home per hour. It would be hard, but it's vitally important.
Noah?
Yeah, thanks for all the great answers. The thing that stuck out, like to me in my history, I used to work for a large infomercial commercial company as an assistant director, and I remember seeing going over budgets and seeing like their aim for profit margin was 20 to 30% minus director's expenses line items within that, right? So they basically had that at the end of the budget, the bid, just as a reference aim point. So I was kind of curious what everybody else was doing.
Next question.
Comes to us from JJ McKenna in San Rafael, who was in with our panel earlier. He says, what is the best, in quotes, camera remote control for interfacing with the new iPhone 13 mini? His wife would prefer a traditional clicker, and yes, he did not include a price point.
Tony?
So I was a little bit confused. Was he talking about a remote control for TV, or was he talking about using the iPhone as a camera? If he's talking about using the remote, using the iPhone as a camera, I have Filmic Remote, which does a variety of different things. You are looking at Filmic Remote. There are all kinds of settings here. I am showing you, I have focus, I have zoom, I have all of the different colors, saturation. I don't even understand all of the features that it has, but it has a wealth of ability to control your camera and your setting and how you look. And it's $9.99.
Alex.
We all know if we measure the velocity, Tony's going to be running this whole place in the next year. You know, like I'm just saying this. It's just amazing, Tony. It's a really, really good answer. If you're doing stills, there's a bunch of Bluetooth ones that you can get that are just like literally they'll just pair with your phone. You hit play and you attach them and you can just hit it so that if you're trying to just take stills with your camera, that's one way to do it. A lot of them are built into selfie sticks. So you can actually have a button at the bottom. Remember that your headphone jack, if you have it wired, a wired headphone jack into your phone, the little volume buttons will take pictures. And then, finally your watch. You can open up your camera on your watch if you have an iPhone, Apple Watch, and it will let you fire the photos off from there.
Bill.
Until I heard Tony's answer, I was going to add something. There's not much that I can add. I use that as well. And I actually, what Alex is saying, the iOS ecosystem often lets you control one iDevice from another iDevice. That I find very useful, but they've covered it.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. Liberty, tell us more about Canva's usefulness for video. I love it for graphic design.
Yeah, so Canva might have been almost 2 years ago. They started piloting, but it's definitely integrated a lot more where you can add video clips. I haven't pushed the limits on it, but for projects where we might actually be in the middle of a stream and they need something with some movement, it's like pop it into Canva, use some overlays, and then maybe do a commercial break or something like just really high level. So for folks who are used to drag and drop, may not necessarily are still wrapping their minds around, editing with Premiere or anything like that, like Canva is a great resource. You might be surprised that even some of the people that you're following on social media and you start seeing them use more video, they're probably using a tool like Canva. And Sky.
Well, I just wanted to share how we at Mad in the Kitchen are using it. It's a great collaborative tool because it is in the cloud. And so you can have somebody start a process and then you can get approvals from somewhere else in the world. You can have people manipulate. Again, there's 60,000 templates that you can borrow, and a lot of them are free and or very nominal to use their graphics if you need something, or you can upload your own. But the new features in the most recent time is, you can make little videos that you can also bring in. So to Liberty's point of a little interstitial or a swoosh or something like that, it's pretty quick and easy. And to the old school, it's PageMaker and Quark Express in the cloud. It's Photoshop almost. You can do some pretty manipulative things with even the photos. So it's free-ish.
Free-ish is right. Tony?
I just wanted to add that a while ago, I did a small graphic for the house of worship that I'm working with, and I was kind of limited to that. So I'm thankful for this conversation because now I will look at it again, because all I did was just a little graphic with it. I didn't realize that you could do all of these wonderful things with it. So thank you.
No problem. And I just wanted to come back and round out that, yes, while it's free, there are memberships that you can, in order to add people, that you're paying 12, 13, of course, depending where you are in the world, so that you can access some of the premium assets. And then also you will have to be creative with it when you are creating those video added assets. So it's not like you can necessarily fade the volume. So there are some of those limitations. But again, if you want to get something out there quickly, it's a great tool to use. And Sky again.
Sorry, the last thing was they also have an add-on tool that if you create something once and then you want it to squirt it out into all these different flavors, shapes, and sizes, it will help you get there much faster. So if you need to go to TikTok and this and that and this and square and upside down and backwards kind of thing.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Guy Cochran in Seattle, and he says, what production still photo could you show right now that would evoke an aha moment that fellow panelists and producers would be thankful to see and hear about?
Alex.
Well, I'll try. We'll see. I was trying to figure out something that I haven't shown, that I was sure I hadn't shown, or I think I haven't shown on one of these. So this was used, I think, for this was before E3. It was like 6 years ago. For E3 for a Oculus, being able to show a person composited inside of a game perfectly, so they match up with the game play, so that you can watch someone playing. You'll see down in the lower corner here, in that lower corner, you'll see the game is down here, and he is composited directly into that game, and his all the vanishing points all match. And the key to making that work was actually, this is just a this little box is the key. So what we would do is we had to have that box, and we built the box in the game. Literally, the game developers put it in the game. And then we had the box on our side as well. By putting the box into that frame, as long as the box matches, so that it bends, it has the same vanishing points, and it has the same, they fit pixel for pixel on top of each other. It means the camera at its focal length and position are perfect. We didn't change our camera; they would typically change it on the computer side. so on the game side. So we were working with them to do that. This is just a stretch screen. I'm afraid I don't have. I realize I don't have the game shot. I just have what it took us to build that. It's the back end of it. We kind of put that together. So that was just a green screen stretched across that. And it was a big deal at E3 a long time ago. But anyway, that's a little production that hopefully people enjoy.
That was great. Noah.
I think for me, and I've talked about this before, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I had this vision and hope because I was lugging a bunch of Pelican cases to and from job sites. And so I wanted to have a cohesive cart, and nothing really fit my needs in the price point, right, without spending thousands of dollars. So I ended up designing and building this cart from the ground up. And it took a really long time, much longer than I expected. But I learned how to weld, and I built custom boxes, and I spent months on this project. And slowly but surely it came together. And so for me, it was the aha moment in that is that, like, you can make something like that happen. It just takes a lot of hard work and energy. And it's fun to share this with other techs and people because seeing people respond to it, I think I've gotten way more out of that than just me on my own. Like, obviously it serves a function, but to see people react to that build is awesome.
I remember that because I was like, I want one of those. Next question.
Next question comes from Danny Law in Malaysia, and he says, has anyone played around with the Lumina AI-powered 4K webcam? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Alex?
I've not played around with it, but I'm probably going to add it to my webcam collection that someday we'll test. But it looks promising. It's a 4K with a 1/2.8 sensor, so that the sensor size looks okay. The fact that it's 4K may mean that its pan and zoom is reasonable. I don't know if anyone's ever actually used it, but it's definitely something that I'm going to probably give a shot. Anytime I see a 4K camera, so far I haven't been successful at ousting the Brio, as far as image quality goes. I have a Kaio Pro from Razer, and I have a Dell here. Those are the two kind of leading contenders, and they're still not as good as the Brio. I do collect these though, because when I want to use multiple cameras inside of a computer, I find that it's easier to use different webcams as opposed to the same one. A lot of software gets a little confused, and I get confused, by the naming. And so I find it easier to use multiple ones. And so I tend to have a bunch of them kind of floating around all the time. Anyway, we'll see if we can't get a review and take a look at it.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. He says, question for those doing small houses of worship. What is your recommendation? Ecamm, OBS, Streamyard, Cinamaker, or MimoLive?
Guy?
I think they're all good. Those look like they're all on the Mac side, and it just depends on who's going to be running it and who's going to set it up, because a lot of it you can set up in advance and then let a volunteer run the show, so to speak. So I've seen setups where they program all the PTZs, like at our church. So I live stream on Sundays, but there's volunteers when I walk in and it's like, whoa, you're the one running the show. It's just like a kid, running the thing. But he was just told preset 1 is the one that you need to stick to for the podium. 2 is the wide shot, and just bounce back and forth between those two. And to start the show, you just click start on the TerraDeck. And so we're using hardware at ours. It's just a TerraDeck VDU, and it's super simple to just hit start, and then it says start broadcast, and you hit start, and it's streaming. And then when you're done, you hit stop, and it stops. So it just depends, again, on who's going to run it. I like Vmix personally. We install a lot of Vmix systems. We put them in city council chambers, lots of house of worship. I'll put a link into some of the builds that we've done. And it's pretty impressive once you get it set up for a volunteer to run, because you can dumb it down to make it look more simple. So again, it just comes down to who's going to operate it. So I would be more concerned with who's the operator before making the choices to what software to use.
Excellent point. Noah?
Yeah, going back to Chris Fenwick's point earlier, like this is a tool that can be utilized to do multiple things, or you can keep it really simple. At the church, my church that I go to, we use Ecamm just for streaming. So it just connects the post switch from our ATEM to the internet, right, to be rebroadcast. In a professional setting, Wirecast used to be the standard. I'm using Studio 6 from Vimeo more so now than anything else, but they're all great tools.
Alex?
And I would probably still stick with hardware. So if I was dealing with, people that I don't know exactly, what their skill set is, I would rather have a ATEM that they can push the buttons, just push the buttons here and everything happens the way you expect. And then the big thing for me, and the thing you'll see, you're already seeing us take advantage of, is the Blackmagic APIs. So you can have a very simple piece of hardware that will do the thing if nothing else works. It doesn't cost very much. You don't have to maintain it. It doesn't have, it doesn't get viruses. It just does the thing that it's supposed to do. But you can extend it with things like Mix Effect Pro. You can, people can, add other things to it. So if you decide to grow into it, I think that if I was going to put something into a house of worship that I didn't want to manage, like I want to be able to sit there and, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we've had older hardware ATEMs in Rwanda that I took down there and donated to the school in 2013 and 14. And they're still running shows with them, and they're not, sure, they don't have every bell and whistle that you can possibly imagine, but they're super solid and they just keep working, and so, there's no updates and there's no processes and there's no whatever, and so that has been, they've done hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of shows at this point in Rwanda for, again, almost 10 years with the same pieces of hardware.
Next question.
The next one comes from Christian Ortiz in South Florida. And Christian says, for Mac users of 10.13 or later, are you using the Apple file system, APFS, for any external attached file storage? Is this a new preferred formatting practice for any new external drives that will be used with Mac OS only?
Courtney?
Well, I'd say no, because I'm not a Mac OS only person. I have both. And anything that I'm putting media on, I always format as exFAT, because it's the most compatible cross-platform format out there. Because sooner or later, somebody's going to want to access those files on a Windows or a Linux system, and they'll be, you won't be up the creek without a paddle. Also, I would not use a new file system on a removable drive, since you may have older Macs that only support HFS. So even if you're staying within the Mac world, APFS formatted drives may not be backward compatible with any older Macintosh equipment that you have around. So I would keep anything that's outside the system drive formatted in an older compatible format, like either HFS if you're staying only in the Apple world, or exFAT or FAT32 is the most compatible, but it limits your file sizes.
Jeffrey?
So yeah, I also run Windows and Mac, so going back and forth with my portable drives is very important. I will say that with APFS, there are a few different programs that you can put onto your PC to read and use the APFS system. Just like on a Mac, you could actually set it up for NTFS for the Windows file system if you need a little bit more secure of a drive. But the best thing, is always to try and put them to exFAT. Unless you need security on them, then you might want to get some if you're going back and forth between a Windows and Mac, you might want to get some third-party software that'll lock it down and encrypt it a little bit.
Bill?
I don't have to go back and forth, and I have to admit, Apple has lulled me into a wonderful sense of security over the past maybe 10 years at least, probably going back 15, in that I have not had an update to my OS that has broken anything significant in more than a decade. So I am lulled into a sense of complacency. I generally accept all the Apple pushed updates when they come, and it hasn't bit me at all for a long time. APFS is their recommended file system now, and their ecosystem likes talking to that more than the old drives that are exFAT. I agree with everybody who spoke before me. If you have to work in multiple systems, exFAT makes more sense than APFS, but if you can stay like I do entirely in the Apple ecosystem, APFS has proved to be solid and brainless for me. It just works, and it works every day.
Awesome. Next question.
Tobias Moss in Minneapolis comes up next. I own a Tascam DR-40 from years ago. It is decently usable to record a music duo performing outside. Is it decently usable to record that situation, music duo outside using 2 additional mics?
Courtney?
I'd say yes, it's fine. I would use the line inputs on it if you're using external microphones. I don't think it has phantom power. But check and see if it does. If you're going to try and plug the microphones directly into it, see if they're Electret microphones or if they're 48-volt phantom. It may not be providing phantom power. And also, it only takes SD cards up to 32 gigabytes, so don't buy any SD cards that are bigger than 32. It'll only take FAT or FAT32 formatted cards. It won't accept EXFAT, which the newer DR-40X does accept. So. I would go in line input with an external mixer and your 2 microphones and just use it as a recorder, and it should work fine. I'd go 24-bit 48K, and remember about 1 gigabyte per hour at stereo.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, even though it is a 4-track recorder, the 2 of the tracks are usually the microphones or a line in, and that can become problematic with that. If you're doing vocal, instrument, that you'll have to figure out how that works. But on that same token, I've used that DR-40 to record a lot of different music situations, whether it be using the 2 XR mics for a live or using the XLRs in to do some post-processing for it. So it'll work fine.
Noah?
Yeah, so I actually used the Zoom version of that device and recorded a music video a couple years ago. And so I'll post this link in the chat just so you can see what it sounds like. We did set up extra microphones, but at the in post-processing, we actually decided to just use the XY or stereo pair on the device itself. So I'll share that link.
Thanks. Tobias?
Just adding one wrinkle, I'm wondering if you think it'll operate well in cold weather, or if the AA batteries will just die super fast. Or I see Jeffrey saying it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Oh.
It should work fine unless it's below freezing, and then in that case the LCD can go black and not respond. But other than that, it should still work.
Guy?
Yeah, I had to go back in time 10 years ago to find this video that I did where you actually can listen to the internal mics, a Rode NT2A plugged directly into it, along with a mixer. So I found if you listen to the test, you'll find that the best sound, the cleanest sound, was feeding it through an old Mackie mixer, and you can get some of these Mackie mixers for cheap, but the built-in preamps, they added a lot of noise, unfortunately. So it depends on how loud those instruments are. If you can overcome that if they're quiet. And then if you're outdoors, you also got to be really careful of wind, because a lot of these mics are susceptible to just getting pummeled but with the smallest gust. So outdoors, I like to have a proper blimp and a shotgun because you're just going to be getting a lot of rumble, and it'll ruin your take.
Next question.
Next one comes from Braden in Moncton, Canada. And he says, for those of you carrying Pelican cases to gigs, what is the piece of kit you can't do a show without?
TJ.
The thing I can't do without is my rock and roller mini cart, which I use to transport the Pelican cases from my truck into the venue. Dragging cases one at a time is not pleasant.
And exhausting. Doug?
This is a very hard question to answer because every gig is different. And so I mean, I have lots of Pelican cases and I have lots of other kind of cases. What I do for bigger shows is I create a tech book. And in this tech book, it has all the pertinent information, the venue, who is on the crew, and then the crew schedule. And then I lay out where the cameras are. So this was a college basketball game. So I have all the cameras and then I have a map of where things are going to go. So I know what cabling I'm going to need, what gear I'm going to need, what converters, all that stuff. And so this tech book is invaluable. And then I just bring everything. So, I mean, because you never know once you get to the gig, oh, I need this cable. I need this fiber. Oh, I forgot this. So I bring everything. And so that's just me.
Yeah, having the luxury of bringing everything is a great thing as well. Jeffrey?
For air travel, the big thing is the foam. You want to be able to, when you pack your Pelican cases, you want to be able to make sure that those items are going to be fine when you pull them out of the case, wherever your destination is. So having getting the foam, using the foam properly so it doesn't fall apart, because if anybody's had a Pelican case, the foam is actually separatable, so you can make holes into the foam so you can put in your stuff. So having that system, planning that out is always a good idea. When I do it locally, yeah, I use my rock and roller as well because I use it for my drums. But the other thing is with the rock and roller, they have options to put shelves on, to put hooks on, so you could actually turn it into a functioning table. And I've done that a couple times where I don't look for any type of table surface to do my streaming on. I'll just put everything on, put a piece of wood on tabletop. You can make some of the stuff your own, because a lot of the times the rock and roller tabletops and things like that are usually out of stock.
Alex?
Yeah, we've just destroyed a lot of rock and rollers, but of course, when we were loading in 3 to 5 events a week, they just don't last as long. At some point, if you do enough volume, you will move to a Cartmaster HD 500. It's a lot more expensive, but you can check it. So literally, we fold it up and throw it in. We've checked 3 or 4 of them at a time. That's just check baggage with all of with 40 Pelican cases that we then show up on the other end with and make that work. As far as the foam goes, I think that Jeffrey's absolutely correct that the foam is key to the operation. We use a lot of markers, so we put the equipment on top of it and then we trace it out, and then we use plaster cut or a knife to kind of very carefully cut around, what those things are. If you're going to do it over and over again, you're better off having somebody laser cut it. Because if you're going to use, if it turns out that's what you're going to use all the time and you figure it out with the foam, it just keeps flaking. So after a while, you'll want to laser cut it to fit it into there.
Courtney?
Yeah, I use a bread knife for cutting foam. Works really good. This long bread knife with serrated edges.
Ooh, I haven't done that.
The piece of the kit that I can't live without now is a folding rocking chair.
Folding rocking chair.
Believe it or not, this actually works quite well.
Does it rock? It
yes,
really rocks?
It does rock. It has these little pneumatic springs on the back here. Let's see, where did it go? Here.
I just need to put around the fire.
And it's great because I have a bad back from working by sitting on top of too many cases for too long, and it throws out the vertebrae in my back. And this way, it supports the back, and you can rock back and put the weight above your waist and not at the bend. And it's very important. I never travel anywhere without it because you can't depend on the fact that they're going to have chairs for you when you get there. Always carry.
You have to put that link in Mukana. I just felt like everyone just like, wow. Bill?
I had a comment I wanted to make, but I'm so fascinated with that chair that I completely lost the thought. And in fact, I want some of those that say office hours on the back.
There it is. Next question.
Group order. Next question comes up. Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California said, is there a webcam out for the HyperDeck Studio HD Plus 4K?
Alex?
Oh, is there a webcam out or is it 4K?
Is it 4K? Yeah.
I am almost certain that it's not, but I don't have one. But I'm almost certain that it's a 1080p output from there, because it's the webcam configuration at 4K is really. I don't, webcams come in 4K, but they don't output in 4K. They output at 1080p that pan and scans inside of 4K. So it's the protocol that I think it wouldn't be as compatible if it outputted 4K.
Noah?
Yeah, that's why I was curious, because their documentation doesn't have it, the manual, and then their
It
web
outputs
presenter.
4K in HDMI and SDI, but their web presenter is 1080p, right?
They have a 4K web presenter. That's what I was going to mention. So I was not sure if it's using that protocol or a different one. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Anthony. It looks like Sereniana in Diamond Bar, California. Sorry if I got your name wrong. Thank you to the Office Hours panel and community for the warm welcome on Monday and advice on how to get involved in Office Hours and project. And he's just excited to join the awesome family. Well, welcome into you, Anthony. I hope I didn't mess your name and scare you away.
Sky?
Well, I'm going to say, Bill, you attempted that name, and with a name like SCHY, I feel that challenge of pronunciations of things, and as dyslexics as well. But Anthony, I can pronounce correctly, and I want to say welcome to day 664 of this social experiment. Alex had an idea, and the ripple continued to spread out, and when he threw that rock in the pond, and it's just been exciting. I love Chris Fenwick's concept of an affinity group. You'll find multiple different interest areas that you will start centering on and finding your gifting into. So as a community, I think that's I've been a part of many communities in my history, and this one is I'm going to also say nutrient-rich environment. I credit Alex with that, wherever that quote came from. But I'm an affinity to that, and am growing in new and wonderful ways.
Lois?
I too came here and got a wonderful welcome, and so I'll pass it on to you, Anthony. I'm glad you're here. I hope you enjoy it. And if you ever need any help or want to talk to somebody, you can also pop into After Hours and just say, hi, is anybody here? I've got this problem with my camera. What cable do I use? Which is what I did this morning. Wonderful, wonderful people.
Great resource. Alex?
Yeah, welcome to the geekiest water cooler conversation you'll ever find. So we're really glad to have you. We're really excited about the project that you're working on, and just let us know how we can help.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Anthony again. Excited about the response last Monday from the Office Hours panel about my projects of redesigning the TV studio and mobile truck for the local city government access TV station I work at. We'll definitely connect with Alex on the invite of making it a second-hour topic. Cool.
Alex?
All I was going to say is that I think we could have multiple, like we played with my studio for a period of time. We could have multiple second hours talking about, the planning, the overview of what you need to do, and then updates of talking about, drawings and process. I think that we like these kinds of projects because it lets us kind of think something out, potentially with a budget. I think we'll all learn a lot from what you're working on. And a lot of us have built trucks and studios, and so we'll have a lot of input, and we'd love to help. So I think that's going to be an exciting, probably couple second hours, and probably some sessions and after hours. And so if ask folks if you don't know how to get into after hours, but we'd love to have you.
Next question.
Next one comes up to us from Paul in Austin, Texas. And Paul says, is on-screen control software helpful for the LG Quad monitor, or is it redundant with the hardware and remote controls? And he has the model number there for his IPS display with USB Type-C and HDR10 with 4 HDMI inputs.
Paul, it looks like you've stumped us. Guy's jumping in. Thanks, Guy.
I haven't actually installed the software, but I keep the remote right here. And when I did go to install that software, it wanted to install a bunch of other old school stuff. And it was not worth putting on the machine because it looked like it would drag my Vmix machine down. So I didn't bother to install it. But it seems like you can do everything from the remote control. So I don't think you're missing out on anything. David Brady would be the one to ask. He actually installed that on his, and he could help you out. But there hasn't been anything that I haven't been able to not do with the remote.
Courtney?
Yeah, I would say the only reason to install the software is if you lose the remote. because then you're going to be unable to control it except for the buttons, and that's always confusing on the front.
Yeah, and Paul, you might want to ask that question again, come into after hours, and hopefully when David is there or someone else might be able to add some additional information for you. Next question.
Comes to us from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Planning to film a figure skater at night. What are lighting tips? Key light set to cool or warm, light from above horizontally, or splash of light off the ice directly. Any other ideas to try out?
Tobias.
Yeah, and for context, I'm filming my girlfriend ice dancing to She's a Maniac by Flashdance. And we're scrappy, so I have a generator and can bring out the Elgato key light. We have a couple soft boxes, 2 Pavo tubes, but we're not pros at filming at night.
Roscoe.
Ice tends to absorb every frequency except blue, so I would actually go blue with my key light. Therefore, I could adjust my camera to go more bluish, and therefore everything would be a little bit warmer. She would come across as a little bit warmer since everything would be adjusted in that area. I would bring a haze machine if you can get your hands on one, because a haze machine and a nice backlight with a skater coming through it would be kind of an amazing effect. You probably don't have a third person to do a spotlight, but obviously tracking her with a spotlight would be another way that would be amazing with a haze machine. After that, just have fun.
Yes. TJ.
I would add what's called a kicker light, which would be a light that's coming from the side. You can sort of see what I've got going here. If I cover it up, it'll bring a light to the side, make it a bright, hard light, and that will illuminate the edges of your subject and make your subject stand out from a darker background at night.
Bill.
I'm following along with what TJ just said, but I'd go even farther. I'd say rim light, rim light, rim light, and that is defined as a light behind your subject that is designed to illuminate the edges of their frame. She's doing athletic moves out there. You want to be able to see the extension of her fingers and everything else. So I would take the 2 brightest light I have, put them behind her probably at about 45 degrees, and flood that area so that you can see her shape as she goes through her athletic moves consistently. So rim light, rim light, rim light.
And then Tobias, you've got to bring back the final product so that we can see how it came out. Next question.
Next question, Jens in Sandpoint, Idaho. How would you create on-deck and upcoming graphics? The order will be decided live during the event, so it needs to be quick to update.
Jeffrey.
I'm trying to figure out if you're talking about what software you're using or how do you actually do that, because that would be a full second hour right there. What I use a program called NewBlueFX. I've also used the free GPCGX. I can't. It's a big acronym right there. And there's a couple other CSS-based graphics, lower thirds, and things like that. You can bring things in. For doing something like that, I want to make sure that it has the ability to attach to a spreadsheet. So I can put the names in beforehand and then be able to just click on that name to bring it into the graphic. And when you're testing it, make sure your fonts are the right size, and always put in long names, put in long information to see what would happen if you got somebody like a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or anything like that that would take over the whole area of the graphic.
Alex?
Some of the stuff has to do with what switcher you're using, because there's different software switchers. You can load a bunch of stuff into it. Hardware switchers, you might have to feed something in, and even in a software switcher, you might want to feed it in. For a lot of the stuff that we've done in the past, I mean, literally something as simple as Keynote is nice to have. Keynote or PowerPoint or even Google Slides can just put out something where you kind of pre-design everything. This is the way I want it to look. All you got to do is type a couple things in and hit go, and just play it out. And that can be played out of a relatively inexpensive computer if nothing's moving. Once you start having things moving, think about keying them over it. So you can have a background layer that's animated and your text is keyed over, and that's just your text over black. Luma key it, put it over top. And so now you can have it look, and if you do a little bit of work on it, you can make it look pretty good. As far as that goes. So you can definitely use graphics engines, the way Jeffrey was talking about it, but you can also go pretty guerrilla with presentation engines to post those, and that gives you a lot of flexibility without a lot of cost.
And Roscoe.
Pro Presenter has an interface built in because worship pastors often don't follow the lyrics the way they're supposed to go. So they have a way you can just click on a slide, go back to where they're at, and then have the slides move forward. So it's got a good interface for maybe what you're trying to do.
Next question.
Next one comes from our friend Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. And he says, I got a free ATEM mini port Raspberry Pi or a third gen Apple TV, internet connection also. Congratulations, I guess, is in order.
Alex?
Yeah, so for that extra port, I would probably lean towards the Apple TV because it gives you a lot of flexibility on what you can pair with it. So you can use the Apple TV as a kind of AirPlay in. So any phone, any iPad, we use them all the time in studios where we actually take the Apple TV and we put it underneath the desk so that it minimizes any throw at all between the device. But if someone wants to pull out some kind of Apple device and just show it for a presentation for whatever, they just hit it, they pair to that, and boom, there. And you can set that up to be really easy pairing, especially if you're a house and you're not worried about lots of people pairing with your Apple TV. You can make it really simple where it's a super fast connection. It also gives you the ability to do like for the cooking, I use that as my wireless camera. I have an iPhone, I pair it to that, and then I'm off to the races.
Courtney?
That sounds like a great solution, Alex. One question I had, is there an app that runs on the Apple TV that lets you play local files, and can you connect a USB thumb drive to it and play local files?
No, I would use a device for that. I mean, there may be one. I don't know of any. What I do with it is if I want to play something out, that's when I'm going to use an iPad or a phone or something like that. It's just for me, it's just a pass-through.
Uses an RF connection pass through. Yeah, I see.
Next question.
Steve Bodner is up next in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and he says, we've rented a set of BirdDog P200 pan-tilt zooms a couple of times and have mostly been happy with them. What are the things to look for when comparing the BirdDog to Panasonic or others for purchase? And he's looking for concurrent HDMI and NDI and a 30 times zoom.
Guy?
Yeah, I mean, you did the right thing by renting them. I think that's the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you put them side by side, and ideally you look at them. I have the Panasonic right here, and then I have the BirdDog right there that's looking outside right now. This is live. It's early morning here. This is like with the gain cranked up, and you can see that it's pretty noisy right now because of the way that it's at it's at 25 dB a gain. Holy cow! But that camera is super clean when you compare it to some of the other cameras that are in that same price range. And what I love about it is it's full NDI. So when you look at NDI HX, there's a little bit more lag, and the color is not as crisp because you're dealing at 8-bit. You get to go to 10-bit with the full NDI. So that's what I would be looking at with the UE100. There's 3 new Panasonics that just came out. So they're rolling them out. We'll start to see the picture quality, but there's another one that I'd also be looking at from Canon, something 500, CN 500, I believe it. So in that price range, you've really got 3 contenders, and this is where an NAB would be nice. But if you can, contact a local reseller and see if they can help you, or jump in after hours. I have both these cameras hooked up, and I can show you some of the software. And that's another biggie, is the software from Panasonic's just amazing. There's so many things that you can do with controlling the ramping speed of the deceleration. That's important, how the PTZ slows down if you're going to use it in a move. So if you're doing repeatable things, again, you're doing the right thing by renting the camera, because you can see how it tracks. Because if you're tracking people, Panasonic now has some AI software. You could download that for 60 days and it'll follow a person around. You map their face, even if they turn around and they're writing on a board like a lecturer, it knows who they are. Even if students walk by, it doesn't track on them. So there's a lot to consider there, but jump in after hours and we could chat more.
Awesome. Next question.
Nate Nicholson's up next from Wake Forest, North Carolina. He says, what are you doing to find success in pitching ideas to new clients?
Jesse.
Oh, there isn't a better time to ask this question than January. Every December, we make a list of what we want to do in the next year, and every January we call our clients and say, what are you guys building in 2022? And then first thing we do is look if there are any one-to-one matches on those 2 goals. Next thing is, what of our goal set can we bend to accommodate their needs? And then the third question of, what of their needs can we bend to accommodate our goals?
Sky.
Well, the key word in there is success, and finding out from that person, that group, what does success look like for them? And then to Jesse's point is, what is it that you have already done that they are asking your help with. And consequently, and you say this is a new client in this particular sentence anyway, they don't know you. They don't trust you. Not that you're untrustworthy. It's just you don't have a relationship yet. So to try a new thing is a really big ask for them. So just give them something that can help them succeed. Then you'll be able to get a little more experimental and creative in the future.
Jeffrey?
It's important not to go in headstrong into any type of pitch meeting like that, because you come in with an idea, they come in with a counter idea, and the next thing you know, everything that you have thought of with what you were going to do is completely changed. It's also important to make sure that you set those ground rules, so you know that you're not getting in way too deep for what you're doing. So then they come back and say, wait a minute, we wanted you to do this, and it's like, there's no way that I could do this, especially on what we put together for a price. So it's very important to just kind of bring it in, and then if you're still not sure on it, just give it a day or two to let it stew, and then write up all the contracts and information for that, so everybody has a clear understanding of what's going on.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Alex?
Mine's more nebulous, but I am going to give you an equation that I've given before, but it is the most important equation. Action equals possibility is greater than circumstance. That is the core of every pitch meeting. And what you want to be listening to, you want to talk less because you might have a possibility. It doesn't matter what your possibility is. What you're doing is you're listening to the client and you're figuring out what are they trying to create, what is possible for them, and what are their circumstances. And that might be budget, that might be politics, it might be all the other things. So you have to figure out how you're going to minimize their circumstances and build a big possibility. And sometimes you just build possibility and ignore the circumstance because you can create so much possibility that they'll do whatever they need to do to make that happen. Sometimes you do have to figure out, well, how do I manage that circumstance? And the velocity of the action is dependent on the delta between the possibility and the circumstance. When there's a huge delta between possibility and circumstance, action will happen very quickly. This is like gravity. There's nothing about this that changes. But the main thing is that that will always work. If it's not working, that means you're missing something. You haven't created possibility for them, not for you, for them. so they have to see the possibility. The other thing I would recommend in pitch meetings is almost any meeting that I have. I don't really do pitch meetings. Like, I'm just available for people to come call me, and then I'll tell them how much it's going to cost. I haven't done a pitch meeting in, I don't know, almost ever. But I almost always, when I have a first meeting with a client, I meet with a producer almost every single time, so that I can be present. I don't write anything down. I don't look at anything. I am present with the client. I'm not working on something else. I'm not looking at anything else. I'm in a conversation with them. In fact, I will remember almost nothing in the meeting. And then I have somebody else sitting there back in the room. This is what you said you were going to do. This is what you said they should do. And that is a huge value that most clients don't get, is someone who's actually talking to them that's only thinking about what they're trying to get done. And then the final thing is look at what they're trying to achieve, not the way that they're trying to do it. The way that they're trying to do it is limited to their understanding of how these things work. And so what you want to do is you want to cut through all of that and get to what is the goal, and then strip it down to what do they actually want to get as an outcome, and then what's the best way, using your experience, hopefully you have that experience, of how to achieve that goal. And those are the things that I would consider. There's probably a whole second hour there. Anyway.
It is. I was just thinking that's like, put that in the file. Yeah. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. What is a hard light?
Sky.
I am not a DP. I'm learning, though, from a person that I follow, Shane Hurlbut. And he teaches a lot about lighting and shading and diffusion and all these other techniques. So I'm going to defer to Roscoe, who is much better, but I will also recommend Shane Hurlbut.
Roscoe?
Hard light is a single light source. The sun on a noonday is the hardest light source you're going to see. It's far away. It comes from a single direction. A Fresnel is a lens that's put in front of a single light source that takes the light from that and directs it all in one direction. So a Fresnel lens, 8-inch Fresnel, is a pretty standard light you'd see in video, that kind of stuff. So that would be a powerful. And then soft light would be a cloud, overcast, or a large light source. A soft box, which creates a large panel of light, is a soft light because there's no defined shadows. It's all about the shadows. If right now on me, I don't know if I can put a hard light. I have a fairly hard light. So you see that hand on my face? That's a fairly hard shadow right there. fairly hard. So I'll leave it there.
Wonderful. Well, we've come to the end of our first hour. And as we move into our second hour, where we'll be discussing NFTs, non-fungible tokens, we've got a special guest with us, Elizabeth Stricker, the Director of Film, Entrepreneurship, and Innovation at Georgia State University. And we're going to jump right into it, Elizabeth. What are NFTs?
Oh my goodness. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to give a broad overview, and I'm really open to lots of conversation because it's a complicated topic. But the way I define non-fungible tokens very simply is digital goods. Any file on your computer that has a wrapper around it that protects it. But let me back up just a second to kind of give a more context. Is that good, Liberty? Do I have that time?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, good. All right. So the internet is great because we can share information with each other. But that information, usually we make a copy of it. So an example would be if I want to share a photo with you, I make a copy of that photo and send it to you by email or whatever. And now I have the photo and you have the photo. That's all well and good until it isn't, until that file or that photo is something you want to protect. So along came Bitcoin, which is basically digital money, and blockchain, the technology behind it, enabled, there's one, blockchain enabled the ability to share a digital file without making a copy of it. Because with money, that's the double spend problem. You can't give somebody $1 and keep the dollar, right? So with a photo, that's what we're doing. So once this technology, this blockchain technology, which is just a digital ledger, and we can talk about that, enabled money not to be double spent, we started to think about what about data not being double spent? And it started with things like a photo or some kind of art that people created that they didn't want duplicated because they'd put labor into that. And so that's where the non-fungible token came in, was using that blockchain technology to protect a file so it couldn't be copied and would be tracked as a single non-fungible token through the internet. Non-fungible means not tradable. So money is fungible. The difference between cryptocurrency and an NFT is that cryptocurrency is fungible, meaning one Bitcoin is basically equivalent to another Bitcoin. That's not completely true, but one photo is not equivalent to another photo because they're non-fungible. So a beautiful, Ansel Adams landscape photo is not the same as a Diane Arbus portrait photo. They're both photos, but they're non-fungible.
So it's the unique factor around it. I'm advocating for some of our producers listening.
Mm-hmm. So it's what's the unique factor? It's unique. It's a unique thing. Most things are not fungible. You can't trade one person for another person. So money is one of the few things, like $1 for another dollar is the fungible thing. But non-fungible token, the key to it is protecting data from being copied. So that's the real key. So right now you're seeing a lot of artists sell their art as non-fungible tokens. So people are like, oh, a JPEG, I could have the JPEG. Why do I need the non-fungible token, token to track the JPEG of some, piece of art, that digital piece of art that I have? Well, it's to prove that you paid for it, that you own it, and that if you decide to sell it, that you can do that. That is, the more we spend time on the internet, the more that really matters. Older people who don't spend a lot of time on the internet and digital things don't matter to them so much might not really get this point. But kids who play a lot of video games and buy and sell skins or create avatars, or want to protect anything digital, this really matters to them. And owning a digital thing in a game or in the virtual worlds really matters. So, think about why you buy art. You buy art because it's pretty, because you want to give the artists some of that money, but also because you want to show it off. And you want to show that you have an original, Jackson Pollock. Well, now people want to have an original Beeple. And so it's kind of like the blue check mark that you get on Twitter that shows that you are authenticated and real and a real person. It's like having a blue check mark on every digital thing that you own.
And Alex, I'll bring you in here. I see that you've.
Yeah, I was just maybe just cross-checking something. I was talking to someone about NFTs, and the aha moment for me was when I was like, I don't understand. This is a couple months ago. I was like, I don't understand these. And they said, well, there's a value to a Babe Ruth trading card. The trading card itself is worthless. It's because we say that it's valuable, and because because we can prove that it's original, gives it value. Other than that, it's worthless. In the same way that digital by itself is worthless. And there are now screens, that you can, like, I know there's TVs now that will put NFTs on them, so because, you can have a Mona Lisa, but that's just a picture of the Mona Lisa. It's not the Mona Lisa,
Right.
And so as that was described, it suddenly clicked. And a lot of the places that, we're looking at it is, also like a ticket. Like I'm going to give you an NFT for a ticket to go to an event. But now that ticket, gets you into the event, and that's one interesting thing, but it also is an artifact that you walk away with from the event that actually may have value at some point, that you went to the event. It's not just a processing, like you now have a little NFT that is the, like the signed ticket of the thing. The question that I had for you with the photos is, when you were talking about that with photos, could you theoretically, I guess, as a photographer, this is going, instead of protecting your content, this is kind of a forward saying, I'm going to give you an NFT, and you could possibly generate many NFTs of that one photo that you hand out to people. But without that, they can't publish it. They can't legally publish without the NFT, proving that is a valid one. Photographers are constantly trying to figure out how to do watermarking and how to do this and how do you prove that it's there. So this could be an active way for them to say you have to buy one with an NFT. From, like, when you buy licensing to use that, you're paying $1,000 or $2,000, and now you own that image at that resolution, at whatever, and no one else can use it on the internet if they don't have that locked. Would that be sensible?
Yeah.
Or is that?
Yeah, no, that's sensible. I mean, the easiest way to kind of make that comparison is, how there's certain softwares where you can't use it unless you put the hardware dongle on your computer. So you can use it when you're not connected to the internet, but most of us are connected to the internet pretty much all the time in order to do what we do. So it's basically like saying, so I can have that photo and not have the NFT of it, right? And I can, be on the internet and show it on Instagram or what have you. But if I want to officially show that I own that photo, it has to be recorded on the blockchain. And the blockchain is just a public ledger, public database. That's how all cryptocurrencies work, is that there's, like, if I give Alex 1 Bitcoin for helping me set up my audio, then there's a ledger.
By the way, I would be happy to help you set up your thing for 1 Bitcoin. In fact, I'll bring all the hardware.
Exactly. That was a really terrible analogy, but there would be a line in the ledger that says Elizabeth gives Alex 1 Bitcoin for audio engineering. And then I can give Liberty a Bitcoin for creating me, a virtual world. And then there's that's in the ledger. And so everything's in the ledger that everybody sort of keeps track of. So that's basically how the tracking of all this happens. The blue check marks, the authentication of a digital thing. And I think that, back to your trading card analogy, Alex, I mean, you could say the same thing about a dollar. A dollar bill is really nothing. It's just a piece of paper. It's really the story and the belief system behind the whole thing. Yeah. So now what's happening, the bigger believers are the younger people who spend a lot more time creating digital fashion, digital avatars, building up the skill set of their, within a game. So those are their digital things that have a lot of value to them. Even though you can copy it, it doesn't mean that you put all the labor. So really, the thing that I really want you all to come away with, and this is a little bit complicated, is the photo analogy that I stated at the beginning. Photos take labor. Everything that's a file on your computer took someone labor. The WAV file, the WAV file of this recording, or the MP4 file or whatever of this recording at the end, took a lot of labor. Y'all spent an hour talking about that before you even, before I came on. So, but if somebody keeps copying that file, then all of your labor is not protected. So, I mean, so a file like a JPEG, a .doc file, a HTML file, a WAV file, all of those things took labor. Now, if you want to give it away, that's okay. But if you don't, the NFT is the protection around that.
And you make a really great point, like just clearly like the protection, the rights, like you are the owner, so that when as value is added to it and we're able to track who that belongs to or who that's ascribed to. And I want to bring Lois in because Lois has a question as well.
So I'm an old person, not a young person, but I do make things. I make artwork. I understand that you would create something and the NFT means that you, Elizabeth, have the right to show that, to look at it, to own it. The way the internet works, in my understanding, is if you put it someplace on a website or whatever, and someone else looks at it, the act of looking at it copies that image to their computer, because otherwise you couldn't see it on the screen. So how is it that they simply have the image? So what is the NFT doing?
Okay, great. That's most people's biggest sort of like hurdle. So again, the Mona Lisa. You can go to the museum and see the Mona Lisa. You can take a photo of it and you can make a print of it, and you can make it, really realistic. You could even, repaint it if you wanted to, but it's not the original. Mm-hmm. Most, do people care? A lot of people don't care. A lot of people have prints of very famous things in their house, and that's just fine with them. But if you want to show that you own it, for whichever reason, there's a million reasons for why you would want to do that, then you have to own the NFT to prove that you own something. And you, Lois, so let's go back to you. Like I see you've got paintings in the background, okay? So if you're going to sell one of those paintings, you set the price and you sell it to a person, and then they can do with it what they want, right? Or you could make a copy, you could make a series of 10 prints, and then you sell it, you put your signature at the bottom, and then it's a real Lois painting that goes about. But so this is just basically applying all of those things to the digital world. I can still take a picture of your paintings back there and hang them on my wall if I want, but you're not, I'm not giving you the benefit of that. And if I want to support you, I won't do that. But also I don't have the real Lois. And if you become, incredibly famous and, if you become incredibly famous and then these are worth a ton, I want to show that I have the original. And on top of that, when you sell me the digital rights to one of your, I buy the NFT of your painting or your digital painting, And then I sell it because it's now worth $1 million, and I sell it to Alex because he has all my Bitcoins. Then you get a percentage of that sale, whatever percentage you put. So then we get into what's called the smart contracts, which is all the rights you put around that digital file that you created, and what and how you want the transactions to take place.
Alex?
How much of the market currently for NFTs is driven by what we would consider new money, which is the folks that made a lot of money on crypto? Like there's just billions of dollars, floating around with crypto that people have, had huge windfalls.
Right.
How much of the current business is based on those folks using their cryptocurrencies to buy something because they don't see value in paper assets because they made all their money on digital assets?
I don't know the precise answer to that. I suspect it's very large, probably over 70%. But there are a lot. So this is why you're hearing about the metaverse, because the metaverse is made up of all these digital goods. And people have been doing virtual reality for a really long time, but until this new economic layer on the internet has happened, the idea that you could build virtual worlds, travel around in virtual worlds, buy things in virtual worlds, be an avatar in virtual worlds, and make money doing that. So there's a lot of onboarding happening. I mean, the sales on OpenSea, which is the biggest NFT marketplace, is just exponentially growing. And it's not all old money. It's a lot of people, getting in on trying to understand NFTs, starting to kind of get the aha moment of NFTs, and also investing in cryptocurrencies, because really right now, it's much easier. Most NFT marketplaces take cryptocurrency, typically Ethereum. But there are some where you can buy with what we call fiat, with regular traditional currency, but much more of them, take cryptocurrency. And so there's a growing body of people buying and selling.
All right, let's get into some of the questions because they are stacking up.
Okay.
They are, in fact. The first one comes from Liberty White in Atlanta. She says, what are some of the promising uses for NFTs?
So, in my opinion, the reason why we're seeing art as the first use case, when you hear of NFTs, you typically think of artwork, although I think it's going to be, much more expansive than that, is because I think artists were the ones that got screwed the worst with digital copyright issues. So audio, like music, movies, digital art, not having that copied and being able to set the parameters around that and then being able to make a living off of that is one of the promising use cases. Then we start to expand out. Alex mentioned a really interesting one, which is, tickets. Tickets, what's so interesting is that you can sell a ticket and you can set the parameters around that ticket. Like it can't be resold, or that it can't be resold for more than 10%, and it's tracked. So there can't be counterfeiting of that. So, so that's a really promising thing. People are starting to think about doing this. It's like, what is an NFT and what is blockchain? There's a lot of crossover, but health data. Most people imagine that you will ultimately have a health wallet where you keep your health data, and it's not centralized, it's decentralized, and you carry that around with you. So when you go to the different doctors, you let them see your data as opposed to them holding your data. This decentralized movement is a huge component of the blockchain, the NFT, and the metaverse. So again, that's what's happening with money. But it's a complicated thing, because you, with cryptocurrency, you hold all of your money in your wallet, and then you trade. Like I would trade amongst this group of people on this panel here, from me directly, peer to peer, from me to Alex, is who I've been talking about. But there's no central bank There's no central authority. And so this is sort of decentralized of all of your data, everything that you create as data, you hold. So there's a lot of promising factors in owning your own data, whether it's health, insurance, et cetera.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. John says, how will NFTs or blockchain crypto overcome the inevitable regulation as crypto begins to compete with fiat currency?
I mean, I think that right now what we're seeing is a lot of experiments. So you're seeing different countries experiment with using Bitcoin. You're seeing different states like Wyoming starting to think of cryptocurrency as a legitimate form of currency and starting to deregulate. And they're experimenting. Miami is a city that's experimenting with cryptocurrency and thinking of coming up with like a Miami token. So what I think we're seeing is people doing experiments, because we do have to be very careful, because one of the things that when I was talking about decentralization, and one of the biggest problems that you hear about cryptocurrency, and you'll hear about it with NFTs, is that there is fraud. And that with cryptocurrency, oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I threw in the fraud thing. Oh, the money, you're owning your own, you hear about people going to trash piles because they lost their laptop that had their Bitcoin on it. So with this decentralization comes great responsibility on the individual to protect and own and track everything. And it's complicated. So I think that we're going to be doing a dance with regulators and people who want to move really far forward and try these new experiments. So I think we're going to have it's going to be sort of a wild, long process of trying to understand how best to use these new currencies and to basically make this massive digital transformation of ourselves all onto the internet. And we've already seen what happens when we don't own our own data. So we want to see what happens when we do own our own data. But what if you lose all of your health data? That would suck too. So we're trying to, so it's a constant balance.
Yeah, it's kind of like the wild, wild west right now, and where we're only in the beginning. Courtney?
Well, that brings up the big problem is if it's decentralized and it's not regulated currently and it's secret, in other words, the transactions are not publicly viewable, its primary use will then turn to be for illicit purposes, which is how a lot of, scammers and crooks now exchange funds right now in Bitcoin of some sort or cryptocurrency of some sort. So wouldn't that tend to lead it away from regulation? And wouldn't it make it more dubious for use for legitimate purchasing, since it has the taint of being used mainly for illegitimate transfer of funds?
So, I think that I started in the internet during the .com boom and was a systems administrator. And we started some of the first websites, and Hooters was one of our first customers. And, porn and illicit activity on the internet is no new, thing. And so people can use Bitcoin for illicit activities, but now there's much more non-illicit stuff, because the truth is Bitcoin is trackable. Because remember, I talked about the public ledger that where all the transactions happen. They're cryptic, but a person who really wants to track something down can actually sort of follow those cryptic transactions. So actually cash is a way better currency for something you really don't want tracked. However, we do see a lot of people, a lot of this sort of scams where people hold money hostage or what have you. It's just that it's easier to send. You don't have to physically be somewhere. So it's the ability to send money remotely. So I think that there's a lot of really, really positive uses for all of these currencies and NFTs. And there's also just as many sort of negative uses, but the bulk of people are going to use this for positive, just like we do the internet. And that's why it's so important for so many people to learn about this and help direct it and help, understand it and regulate it in ways that are good for humanity.
Next question.
Next question comes up from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. He says some of the main resistance to blockchain technology is based on its heavy electronic and computational footprint. How will it become sustainable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what he's talking about is Bitcoin. So there's over like 20. There's over 3,000 cryptocurrencies. The number one is Bitcoin, and number two is Ethereum. Bitcoin uses something called proof of work, which is basically every 10 minutes, in order to write to the blockchain, computers have to solve a really hard math problem. That's called mining. And it's really high intensity compute, and which means intense electricity. And that is what people see as the really bad for the environment component of cryptocurrency. Ethereum is also what we call proof of work, but it is moving towards proof of stake. And so people are waiting for Ethereum 2.0 to come out this year. And it will use, instead of solving a hard math problem, which uses all of this compute power, it'll be where people stake their Ethereum to validate the transactions on the blockchain, not having to use this heavy compute. And there's lots more level one cryptocurrencies like Solana and Tezos that are moving away from that don't use proof of work, which is the high compute. So lots of work is being done to move away from the environmentally damaging computing aspect of cryptocurrencies.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jonas Tatel in Stuttgart, Germany. He says, do people care if the NFT is truly on the blockchain?
So you have to be able to electronically prove that you own something. And so blockchain technology, whether we're talking about Ethereum or Tezos or Solana or Flow, these are all the different kinds of blockchains that people use for NFTs. So to prove that you own something, yes, people do care. Back to Alex's point, there's a lot of clubs and tickets and things that you have to show in your NFT wallet that you own, say like, an NFT, like a Bored Ape Yacht Club, before you can get into a certain Discord server, see a certain Instagram, back channel, get onto different websites, or enter into a club of some sort, like the ticket thing. So yeah, proof that you have it in an actual wallet is important in those instances. But, if you don't have the NFT of, let's go back to Lois's paintings. Let's just say that I put Lois's paintings up on my Instagram, but I don't actually own them. So all of that sharing, that making it public, is actually just good PR until somebody wants to buy it.
Right, because you don't have necessarily the rights to it. And I think there's a point that you said earlier, just to bring that more into context, is the community aspect of even owning something. Like the reason why Bored Apes is so popular is because of the collective, like the FOMO of I want to be a part of this. So I'm going to own a piece of this, or having the right to being one of the people who have, what was it, 10,000? Is that it? They only made 10,000 cents of it. So
yes.
All right, next question.
Next one comes again from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. He says, have you read Molly White's recent blog post about how blockchain systems are not truly decentralized nor immutable? Any dialogue around Molly's arguments? And he has a link there to the discussion.
I haven't read Molly's arguments, although I definitely hear those. I think that, Bitcoin came out of a fairly libertarian movement where we don't need any centralization whatsoever or any government whatsoever. And you can watch the YouTube documentary Banking on Bitcoin if you want to see the origins of it, which is pretty fascinating. But Bitcoin is one of the most truly decentralized cryptocurrencies, but most of the others have some sort of governing agency that sort of, like when you're transitioning from Ethereum 1.0 to 2.0, there's a group of people that are sort of making some decisions, and many of these marketplaces, there's centralization and people sort of governing and watching how things are happening. So you can't have complete, no government involved or complete government control. There's going to be a happy medium in there. So yeah, I think that there are some centralizations, just a lot less centralization, not like, one bank that holds all the money and then that's one central place where all money is stored and all decisions are made. It's going to be a balance between centralization and decentralization, which goes back to the idea of the regulations. So I think we're experimenting with new ways of collaborating with each other. And this is why you're seeing these different communities group around these different currencies and NFTs, because we're basically reimagining even what a country is.
Next question.
Next one comes from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. Again, he says, if you're already part of a community, let's say a house of worship, a large club, and so forth, how can NFTs be utilized?
Tobias, did you want to say something before, like to give context? Because I know that you...
Sure, yeah. I'm a rabbi at a synagogue in Minneapolis, and just because of the excitement around this, I've been thinking about this, and the only thing has come to me is, you become a member and you get an NFT as part of that, but I don't know what that does or why. Mm-hmm. So,
what are your thoughts? Yeah, your thinking is spot on, and it's really as simple as like coupons and Delta miles, and it's really, so we're really just sort of figuring out like how groups of people incentivize a certain behavior. Basically, that's what you're so like, what would you get an NFT for? Being a member, or being a member and showing up each week, or volunteering each week. So what is the behavior of this group of people that you want to encourage more of? And that's what we're seeing in these current, these communities where certain values or certain currencies are given for all variety of behaviors. So definitely there's lots of houses of worship which are sort of thinking of tokenizing. So that's like a tokenizing of an economy. And it's very strange, I know, because it's basically like taking, Sky Miles or Roblox bucks, in-game, in-game like currencies or what have you, and applying it to adult behavior. But it is something that we're realizing there's a way to incentivize behavior, and it's with these sort of tokens and this sort of keeping track.
Alex?
The question I have related to that is that if an organization gives someone an NFT, could they revoke it if the person acts outside of the rules of that organization? But also, what is the value if the NFT only has value within that organization? What is the value of doing it? Why not just give them points, as opposed to an NFT?
Right. Well, I think that's that's something that is, it's easier to keep track of the points with the NFT or the cryptocurrency or the blockchain. So that's sort of the reason for doing it. The revoking actually goes back to the question where somebody said about immutable. Remember how I was talking about the ledger? And one of the things about the ledger is that it's append only. So you can't go back. You can't change. You can't like go into a spreadsheet and erase a number or erase a name. You can say, if I decided that, or if you and I decided that your audio services were actually only half a Bitcoin, then I would have to give you, you would have to give me a half a Bitcoin back. It's not that we wouldn't go change the ledger to half a Bitcoin. So it's always append only. So the right to be forgotten or to revoke a person's access to take, a Bitcoin away, or take a token away, just depends on how the rules are written on that.
It's the same with cash. Like if you gave them $50,000, you have to get them to give you the $50,000 back. You can't just say, I'm going to remove it like PayPal. Not that I'm doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Next question. Oh, Tobias, you wanted to say one more thing?
Yeah, just do you have an example of a community, house of worship or otherwise, that is doing that kind of membership inducing behavior with this that I could check out?
I don't, but I'm quite certain that you could probably find it. I don't have an example on my in my head right now. Although I guess we're seeing things like, what are some groups of people that I've seen using what we're seeing? Okay, this brings in this whole thing of what's called DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations. So these are collectives of people that give votes to members, and there is no centralized authority. Like there's not even a rabbi, right? There's the rabbi is part of the group and not like doesn't sort of deem what's going to happen. The group all gets different voting systems. So what we're seeing is in this sort of experimenting of how groups of people incentivize behavior is through DAOs, DOAs, and you will, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. So the Flamingo DAO is a really popular one. That's the most popular one around NFTs, but there's all sorts of DAOs, like the Constitution DAO you might have heard of, that tried to buy the Constitution with a group of people. Instead, one person ended up buying it. So there's a lot of these kinds of experiments going on, and I'm quite certain you could find houses of worship experimenting in this space.
And Lois, and I see like this is definitely popular. There are a lot of questions piling up, so we're going to try to move swiftly through the next few questions.
So in Tobias's case, if I wanted to acknowledge someone had done something special, I'd give them a gold star. And you're saying we can give them an NFT, but don't they have to pay for it? It seems like the NFT is just an exchange for money.
So no. So it's very interesting because what is money? We're really sort of reassessing what actual money and value is, because the Sky Mile or the Tobias bucks really don't matter outside of that community, right? Like Sky Miles don't do anything outside of Delta, and Tobias bucks don't do anything outside of Tobias's house of worship, unless
we'll call them mitzvah points. Mitzvah points.
Okay, let's call them mitzvah points. But they might be tradable, with another synagogue or something, right? So yeah, you can give the points. It's just easier to track. And what we're also seeing, so just think about regular fiat currency. You live in the United States, you use dollars. If you go to Europe, you need euros. You go to an exchange and you exchange your dollars for euros. And so that's how we have interoperable groups of people. So we'll start to have interoperable synagogue points or, art currency points. And this is all sort of being experimented with right now. So yeah, I think it's a good way to kind of just start to organize it in your head.
Bring it all together. Alex?
Last question. Sorry. This is a really fascinating conversation around it. You could theoretically, let me know, you could theoretically, rather than having, you have volunteers, but you could give volunteers NFTs for their hours of volunteer time that don't mean anything right now, but could mean something in the future. And then they could transfer those back and forth. And maybe the organization says, you can come to this, or we're going to have this, whatever, and we're going to pay you. You can buy, but only with the NFT. So only the volunteers could theoretically, that gives them and that might screw a lot of things up, because there's a whole value in volunteering and not having a return and, all those other things, especially in that context. But as an organization, you could theoretically do something like that.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's basically like what startups do with stock options. You get paid to work,
Oof.
You get paid your $80,000 a year to be an engineer for this startup, but you're also going to be getting stock options. And if this company goes up, then you're going to go up. So it's basically applying all of this monetary theory that's been going on in very few, top, 10% of the world to everything that we're doing, for better or for worse.
That's a really great, that the startup idea and the value there, and that you're investing in the potential of, is a really great way to frame up. I just want to take this moment to tell our producers, we've got a lot of questions, which is wonderful. We love that. But then also we're looking at the time. So this is the time to vote on the questions so that we can make sure that we get to those that are, they've got a lot of votes on them. And it looks like, Elizabeth, we'll just have to bring you back. Next question.
Next one comes from James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland. He says, what happens to an NFT when the file format becomes obsolete? Can it be migrated to a new file format?
So that's an interesting question. And there probably would be a way to do some sort of exchange or something. So let's say that you bought a JPEG, and it's actually, so you have the token on the blockchain and you have the JPEG, and you could prove that you had the JPEG, and then you could sort of trade it in for an NFT. The artist or somebody who issued it in the first place would have to okay that.
Next question.
Ashadev in New York City says the blockchain stores the link to your content and not the content. The content is stored by providers like OpenSea, and you are back to the centralized web. Any thoughts on how to make this truly decentralized?
So actually, it's not stored on OpenSea, it's stored on the Interplanetary File System, which is a sort of a decentralized file system. Lots of people are working on new ways to make a completely decentralized file system, using things like Filecoin. There's a company in Atlanta called Storage. So people are working on that problem, so that in case a server goes down, you don't lose your NFT. So that is still being worked on. Arweave is very interesting in that space.
Next question.
This was actually mine from earlier from San Diego. Where does the NFT intersect with copyright? Is there a nexus at all between those?
Yeah. So when the NFT is sold, there's a statement about you may, you like the NBA Top Shots, sort of the trading cards that Alex was referring to, where it's got like a live action replay of a basketball event. So there's very explicit about what you can and can't do with that replay. So when you buy it, you know that you can show it off, what have you, but you can't use it for commercial value. So usually, like if I buy one of Lois's paintings, I cannot make a giant, Ford commercial with her painting in the background, because I don't have that was not in the contract when I bought it. So there's a smart contract around when you buy the NFT about what you can and can't do. Enforcing it is a whole nother thing. If it's a digitally enforceable around the resale, then that's great. But if it's something more like, using something for commercial value, then we're back to what we normally have to do, which is track stuff down.
Next question.
Next question from Dick Brewer says, if NFT is to protect for non-duplication, is the next level of digital rights management, DRM, a way to protect property?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So what are some of the problems solved? A lot of this doesn't really mean a ton in cryptocurrency, and stuff doesn't mean as much in a country like the United States, where we have fairly trustable banks, governments, real estate, tracking, et cetera. But in places like India, where the rights to land ownership is very questionable, and people get screwed constantly in that, this is going to be a huge market for tracking property, ownership of property, who owns it, who bought it, when it was sold, what it was sold for, all of that. So yes, I think that, well, there's real estate, and then you don't even want to get started on the digital real estate and all the virtual worlds and virtual real estate that's going on now.
Alex?
And you could theoretically build an application or a web interface that basically says you have to turn on protect for NFTs on your browser, or you won't be able to see the images. And when you do those, that locks up the ability to copy or whatever, like it's like you have to turn something on that kind of matches all of that up,
right?
Theoretically.
Adobe is working on an NFT component to their software.
I saw the lights go on for all of the panelists here. Next question.
Jason Panks in Nashville, Tennessee is up next. How are NFTs different than standard copyright or trademark?
So again, standard copyright and trademark still apply. NFTs is just the tracking of the ownership of the digital file. But what you can and can't do with it still has to be in the smart contract, and still lawyers need to, lawyers still apply.
Next question.
Sky Gleason here on the panel in Seattle says, if art is never finished, Mozart used Bach sequences of the same 12 notes, and while some creators will profit, how can NFTs not threaten creativity?
Great point. One of the things that's really exciting is there's whole platforms like async art and art blocks, and there's ones for sound too, where people are collaborating. And so you maybe different people, maybe you put up 3 or 4, soundtrack or, sound stems, and then you remix it and you make it an NFT out of all the people that contributed to that. Because what's so great is, we can mentally, you can understand how to fractionalize a dollar into different components, or different people own it. But now we're doing fractionalizing with art. Again, if everybody here contributed equally to this podcast right now, then you could fractionalize the resale of this podcast, and you could give different people different, components to it. So it's basically like this nuanced fractionalizing math applied to kind of every bit of labor and effort.
Sky?
That was a lot more answer than I was hoping we'd ever get. So thank you. And this is a deeper conversation about, yes, I want artists to be paid, but I don't want it to be at the threat of halting and stopping creativity. Just because UPS says it owns the color brown, does that mean I don't get to use that color? So that's the conversation about commerce in art and creativity.
Well, it's very interesting, because right now we're seeing a massive renaissance in art and creativity through this NFT thing. So we'll see where it goes. I think that there's a lot of experimentation, a lot of really interesting things going on right now.
Next question.
Comes our own Courtney Gooden in Hollywood. Would NFT be a viable way to protect expensive production software against piracy, or would it add too much cost or overhead for each purchaser?
Protecting software itself. I don't really know, but I mean, yeah, I could see that there might be a way where, the thing that you create, let's say that you edited a video with some Adobe software, and if it didn't say, created by this version of Adobe software, that was sold to this person, then yeah, I could easily see that there's a way to protect that somehow or another. Yeah.
Courtney?
Well, just to expand on that, it seems like NFTs are used for protecting one particular item to one particular purchaser. But can you have multiple purchasers of the rights to use that item? And then how would you verify using NFTs? How would you verify the rights of, let's say you mentioned Adobe. Let's say, Photoshop now is an NFT protected piece of software. You purchase it, you purchase the rights to use it, and then somehow you have to verify that you have the rights to use it. Does it have to go out to the blockchain to verify each user? If there's 4 million users that purchased a copy of Photoshop, does it have to go out and verify on the blockchain? And how much overhead does that cost, and the necessity of updating all those ledgers for each and every purchase of the rights to use that single piece of software? Would that be too cost prohibitive to use as a method of DRM, basically?
I mean, that's basically how things are working. So every time a sale happens of these NFTs, they're being traded and bought and sold and what have you. And there's just another, it means now Elizabeth in Elizabeth's wallet, Lois's painting is in Elizabeth's wallet. And if Lois decided to do, 100 prints, and then all of us bought one plus 70 more people, and those transactions are all kept up to date. But we have so much compute power now, that's just not that big of a deal anymore. But that is what's going on, is that there's just these giant ledgers with all the transactions going on.
Next question.
James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland says, how does a digital document become an NFT?
That's good. So great point. When you, it's called minting. So when you, it's kind of got a money, analogy to it, but let's just say you write a story in a doc file and you want to put it on the blockchain, then you go to, you can go to a variety of platforms or marketplaces. So you could go to OpenSea, that's more typical for art files, but there's ones for documents, for stories or what have you, and you go and you mint it on the blockchain. So on January 17th, 2017 at 10:06 a.m. James puts story number 1 on the blockchain, and it is there and permanently done. So if you wanted to change the name, you would have to append it and put a new, change to it. But that's how you do it. You mint it.
Next. Oh, Lois. Sorry, Lois.
So a little more granular than that. So I've got a painting. Mm-hmm. I want to sell it to you with NFTs. What literally do I do? Do I take it, I scan it? Do I have to take it to some place to have a particular kind of print made? What do you physically do to make an art piece into something digital that you're going to sell?
Well, so most of the stuff that we're talking about with NFTs is digitally native. So we talked about photos, videos, audio, what have you, but you can, scan it or take a really great physical of it. And then that's the NFT. You're selling that. You're not selling the physical. There's things called phygital, which is digital and physical, starting with sneakers is one of the main kind of things, where there's like a little chip that's on your painting that has an analogous NFT component to it.
Next question.
Next question from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. And Eduardo says, how do you ensure the digital asset is not duplicated and confirm you own it?
So that is something that's been a bit of an issue. So let's just stick with Lois has a beautiful, beautiful digital version of her painting. And she decides to make what's called a 1 of 1. She's not going to make, she's not going to make 10. She's going to just make 1. And she she mints it on OpenSea. She says, I'm Lois. This is who I am. This is the name of the painting. This is the date. It's this size. And here it is. Okay. Alex, with all of his cryptocurrency, goes and buys it. From OpenSea. And so now Alex owns an original Lois. But let's say, I'm going to use me because I don't want to defame anybody, but let's say I go and make a copy, I just do a right click, and copy the file because, Alex is showing it in his wallet, and I go and put it for sale on OpenSea, the same file, everything about it's the same, but I don't own that. So OpenSea will have to track me down. And there are things going on because you're seeing these Bored Ape Yacht Clubs are worth, $250,000. So there is a lot of incentive for people to scam others. Yeah. But people can see it's not on the blockchain and it's not original, but you can get scammed by it if you don't pay attention to that kind of thing.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Next question.
James Hutchinson back again from Dublin with what guarantees that that an artist does not create another NFT of the same piece?
Okay, that's a good point. Reputation. If you say if Lois says this is a one of one and then she keeps selling these one of ones, then eventually the word will get out, I guess.
Because it is very just going back to the community aspect of what is happening. The word gets around very, very quickly. Sky?
I immediately thought of Picasso because while he created very unique and individual things, he commercialized them and turned them into tchotchkes and ashtrays and little things that would sit on your counter. So reputation / I don't know where that fits into the conversation, but as an example.
Alex?
But this is the same problem that we've had with art for a couple thousand years. That someone will either produce a bunch of them, or people will copy it, or people will not have the original. I mean, this is not a new problem, in this space.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question, and we've got a lot of questions. Are you good on time, Elizabeth? If we go over a few minutes,
sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
First of all, there's so many questions. The question is, how far over is okay for you? Is it like 15 minutes or half an hour? Or there's a lot of questions that are stacked up. We could also just have you back again. I don't want to take up too much of your time as well.
Yeah, we can go for, how about we go another 15 minutes and then we just sort of see where it goes. It's up to you all, whatever you all want to do.
Well, this is a great
conversation. You don't want to say that.
Our
group will be like here for another hour.
Yeah. So we'll go 15 minutes over.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Next question from Roscoe Jones in Brea, California. How will copyrights become more secure and enforceable using blockchain or NFTs? Do the courts already recognize them as trusted evidence?
So they are recognized as evidence, and because you can see when someone purchased it, and you can see when somebody minted it onto the blockchain, when someone purchased it, and if it's not on the blockchain, then the transaction is not legit in the NFT world. So I think that we will continue to see a lot of growth in this space. If I were in the legal field, I would be learning a lot about this, because some people say, oh, this will replace lawyers. Because when I say smart contracts, whenever you create something, you write, if this, then that, if this, then that, which is programming language, but it's also human language. Like if, Elizabeth sells Lois's painting for more than 20% over what she bought it for, then send the rest of the money to charity. You could have that automatically happen. So there's a lot of if this then that can be programmed in, but we still need lawyers because there's a lot of stuff to be figured out as far as the copyrights and et cetera.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I think Liberty froze? Oh,
I'm sorry. Forgive me. My daughter came in and I had to mute myself. Can you take a moment to describe a smart contract?
Yeah. So I started to kind of do it, but the most simplest way to describe a smart contract would be when you walk up to a vending machine. You walk up to a vending machine and you have $1 and it says, and you want to buy a Coke. And so you press B1, put in $1, and nobody, does anything. The algorithm, says, okay, a Coca-Cola comes out. More complex would be the Coke costs 75 cents. Press B1, the Coke comes out, the 25 cents comes out. That's sort of a smart contract. So it's basically something that automatically happens. But a good example would be, let's just say that Lois sells her paintings and she's put a smart contract around it, which is that it is $100 and 10% of the royalties goes back to her. So Alex buys her painting and, that's the first one. So she gets the full $100. But then let's say I go to buy her painting and my wallet, and he sells it for $300 to me. He gets the $300 minus 10%, which automatically goes back to Lois's wallet. So that's a smart contract. Nobody has to do anything, but let's just, make it more interesting. Let's just say that Lois painted this painting with Courtney, and actually they both put equal amounts of time and energy into the painting. So it could then the money splits and goes half to Lois and half to Courtney, or they could decide that Lois did the bulk of the work and she really gets 75%. Or you could just say, and then they could also be that no, every sale of this painting goes to a charity. And so you can just set any kind of thing where money goes from one place to the other as a smart contract. You could say it can't be sold after January 1st, 2023 for whatever reason. You could change. So anything you can put in programming language can be put in a smart contract.
Brittany.
So how would you handle survival of ownership? In other words, if I want to leave my NFTs to my kids, had I kids, does it transfer? Would I have to give them the passwords to my crypto drive, and that would automatically give them access to the assets, or would there have to be a transfer of ownership? How is ownership handled on the blockchain upon death or survivorship?
So that's a great point. And one of the things that people are so excited about NFTs is the ability to transfer generational wealth, so that if Lois is a super famous painter but somebody just pays her work for hire and she doesn't really reap the benefits of the resales and the resales and the resales. But now with NFTs, she has the wallet and she can either, and so she would just give the wallet and the password to the person that she wants to deem the owner of that. So yeah, it's usually through the originating wallet. There are ways to gift NFTs as well, but because she's already sold it, it really goes back to the wallet.
And what if someone dies suddenly without transferring their secret password to anyone?
That's why people are writing this stuff down and keeping really good track of it. And you've heard about these things where people have died and they can't find the cryptocurrency. So yeah, it's important to keep track of.
Alex?
And what if you buried treasure and then died? That's essentially what.
That's why you put your money in the bank.
Exactly. So the just two things. You could give away software that when it generates it would always get 1% of all the revenue that's generated. Like you could say you can use the software for free, but we get 1% of all revenue generated from the software. Like that. That's the kind of thing I think that like if they have an NFT of that. If they create something, it always creates something in that area, and it always gets 1% back or 0.1% back or whatever. Yep. And then the other thing is thinking about like an artist community. could have a bunch of resources, welding and all kinds of things. Think of the Crucible here in Oakland, and everything you create out, but a digital Crucible,
right?
But a digital artist community could be generating all that content as a group with group assets, and then the artist community gets some percentage all the time. So there's like a 10% or 5% or 1% that goes back to the community that pays for everything to exist. And then anyway. It's
so these DAOs and things like that are doing a lot of really interesting stuff around that. I am part of the Jenkins, the Valet writers room. What's really interesting, Jenkins is a Bored Ape. I have a much cheaper mutant ape. I bought a writer's key. We as a community are writing the Bored Ape book and game, and we will all get a tiny percentage of all the sales of that. And there's lots of groups of people doing really interesting things around that space. So it's very interesting about labor and behavior and actions that sort of reap rewards.
Awesome. Next question.
Next one comes from Greg Zwick in Irwin, Pennsylvania. He says, could you set a time limit on how long the NFT is yours?
So there's a lot of things where, you've heard about Banksy's, like burning of Banksy's. Maybe you've heard that, maybe not, but in NFT and cryptocurrency, basically you can burn, we talked about minting is putting something on the blockchain. Burning is taking something off the blockchain or getting rid of it in that space. So there are things where like tokens of any sort will only last a certain period of time. Yeah. And then they self-destruct or disappear or burn, as you say. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to kind of use time in that context.
Great question. Next.
Jeff Dooley in Chicago says, what advantage for me is having my medical history in the public blockchain?
So good point. Okay. If you've dealt with medical anything, and you're on, my medical data thing at Piedmont Hospital here in Atlanta, but then you go to Northside Hospital, they've got to get a copy of your records and take forever, to get hold of that sort of thing. And then what if you go to Japan and you have a motorcycle accident, and then they've got to call the, your hospital or your doctor or what have you. So what's really important is that, when you go to the doctor, they give you all the reports, you have all that. And let's just say that when you're in Japan, you want them to see all of your medical records related to, your body, but maybe you don't want them to see some of your mental health records. You get to control who gets to see it. You can also put your data up for research, but you can ask it to be anonymized. So let's say you have a rare disease or something, you don't want to be acknowledged, but you do want to contribute your data to this research study. So there's a lot of advantage for owning your own data. Of course, we get into what are the standards, what are the storage, mechanisms, what happens if you lose your data. I'm sure there would be places that would have backups of it, but I think that there's a great deal of advantage to always having your own medical records, depending on where, how you move about in the world.
Next question.
Sam Greenwood in Toronto is up next with, how would NFTs interact with the principle of fair use?
So that's a great point. I mean, a lot of people are putting like stuff up for fair use, and then you can create an NFT and give money back to that fair use organization, or you can just give away your NFTs. The only thing that's preventing giving away of NFTs is something called gas fees, which is back to, I think it was Courtney who asked, like, what about all these transactions? Isn't it like gonna, just be exponential? So there is a small cost to using the blockchain. With Ethereum, the gas prices are really high right now, and they're hoping that they'll go down. But on other blockchains, the use case, using the blockchain is like 0.001 cent or something really small. So you can give away stuff. And I think that there's a lot of really interesting use cases in the open source copyleft space that a lot of people are playing around with. But NFTs are very much like changing the internet to being like mine, pay, own, which we haven't been using those terms as much. But the problem is a lot of people were getting screwed by having everything be free. So we're kind of trying to find the right balance there too. Chris?
Yeah, the gas fee thing was a surprise to myself and John Preto. It's weird. We wanted to make something that had some pretend value, just for fun. But it turned out it was going to cost us, what was it, John? Like something like $50 a transaction to give somebody a free, fun little thing.
Yeah, it's right now the Ethereum gas prices are just really outrageous.
And what does that mean?
What does really outrageous mean?
What is that? What are we paying for when we buy gas if it's not going in my truck?
Because you're paying for so the miners, the people that are solving the hard math problem to keep the ledgers going, are the ones that you're paying. You're paying the right to use the blockchain. And so that it's just the thing is that it's based on how many people are using that particular blockchain. And so it's really popular right now. And they're moving to the Ethereum 2.0, so the gas prices won't be as high. I do most of my buying and selling on other platforms that are Tezos or Solana, where the gas fees are nominal, not even noticeable. But we're in a transition period right now, and it's because of the exponential growth of Ethereum and all of the NFTs that are being bought and sold that the gas prices are going up so high right now.
Is it somewhat analogous to me saying, I want to buy a stick of gum, but I got to go pay part of the rent for your bank that you're going to put my money in? Is it kind of like that?
I mean, it's really probably a little bit more like transaction fees at a bank or something like that, which is what the whole point of why cryptocurrencies came about, was to make the sending of money smooth and easy and cost less, because there's no centralized authority to be taking chunks of your,
And yet here we are.
And yet here we are. Yeah, gas.
Something seems fishy to me.
Well, there's a lot of work being done in it. Like the important thing to remember is that we're still early. So having everybody be in, knowing about it, whether you like it or not, but at least having a sophisticated opinion about what's good or bad about it is imperative, in my opinion.
Courtney?
And because of the distributed ledger, won't that exponentiation always exist? And the more transactions, the more popular it becomes, the more transactions happen, the more ledgers happen, and the cost goes up. And not only the transactional cost, but the environmental cost goes up to store all these transactions that are happening on a distributed, a million distributed ledgers all over the world for buying that stick of gum,
Yeah, I mean, and I think that also people are deciding what does and doesn't need to be on the blockchain. The stick of gum doesn't need to be on the blockchain because it's not something you're going to hold on to and invest in, right? So, or maybe it just depends.
Yeah, but Michael Jackson chewed that stick of gum.
I was waiting for Chris to come in with something.
Yeah.
Gum comes with the baseball cards, right? You do know that, right?
It's true. Yeah. So, I mean, these are problems to be solved and to be understood.
Alex?
I saved my time.
Okay. Elizabeth, I know we're like 1 minute away. Do we have time for maybe, is it 3 more questions, 2 more questions? What would you say?
Sure.
Okay. 3 more questions. Here we go. Next question.
First one from Tobias Moss. What crypto wallet do you recommend to get started?
This is not financial advice. However, I recommend MetaMask is the most common for Ethereum. And, most people go to Coinbase to buy their cryptocurrency, and most people use MetaMask as their wallet. If you want to get into the really avant-garde art area and buy on the Hic-Ek-Nunc platform and use a Temple wallet, that's also something. And then Solana has the Phantom wallet. But MetaMask is by far the most popular and the one that I would start with.
Thank you. Next question.
Lois Richter in Davis, California up next. Who issues cryptocurrency? Can I just make up $1 million for myself?
So good point. I mean, money is the greatest story ever told. And so, like I said, I highly recommend that you watch Banking on Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was sort of the first cryptocurrency, and it's owned by the community. The community owns it. The community keeps it up. The community decides that, whether it's valuable or not. You can make your own cryptocurrency. I teach at a blockchain lab at Georgia State University. I teach everybody how to create their own cryptocurrency. It doesn't mean that it has any value or any use case, but going back to Tobias's place of worship, he can create his own mitzvah coin and token and give it value.
Lois?
So you've been giving us so much information. Is there a way that you want us to reach you or to find out if you have any videos or books or anything to teach us more? We don't have more time today.
So if you're in Atlanta, we're having an NFT ATL conference, February 25th to March 6th. I have a TED Talk that maybe Liberty shared, which I'm happy to share. I do have some list of, I'll send a list of sort of resources that I think are really good. I think that it's kind of like one of those things, once you kind of, we call it going down the rabbit hole. It usually takes about a year to get your head completely around this concept. So just start, you'll start noticing things and start learning stuff now that your interest is peaked. But yeah, I'm happy to share some resources.
And we can maybe get you to come back.
Sure.
Okay. We would like that. That's great. It's amazing. It's an amazing hour.
Great.
I vote for Monday with Elizabeth. Ranjan Shandil.
If you want Monday mornings, we'll give them to you for as many as you want.
Ranjan Shandil in Los Angeles says, is there a cold storage wallet you recommend for storing your NFTs offline?
Yeah. Most people use like a Ledger Nano. There's a variety of the Ledger Nano is the one that's most popular, but there's a variety of them, and you can just type in cold wallet and on Amazon or any online market and purchase those. And that's basically where you instead of having your computer connected to the internet, where people get nervous about things getting stolen, you put it on basically a USB drive and pull it off.
Don't lose it.
Don't lose it.
At all. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. You see that you might not see the chat, but it's just been blowing up the entire time.
Awesome.
And as we said, we've got to bring you back. So thank you for your time today and for this wonderful conversation and getting us started with NFTs.
Yeah. Thanks for the fun conversation. I appreciate all the questions and thoughts there.
My head's exploding. so it's just like little plants are going everywhere. I was just, so.
It's exciting times. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your time. We'll definitely try to have you guys talk, and we'll see how often we can get you back. I mean, once a year, once a month, once a week, every day, so anyway, fantastic. Thanks to our producers for the great questions and keeping this conversation going. Really a lot of thoughtful questions that made this interesting. Thanks to the panelists for all your great answers. And, this doesn't happen. Office hours doesn't happen without the panelists, and after hours doesn't happen without office hours. So thank you so much for the support that you give everybody. And now